a couple hours and we want to make best use of it. If somebody does not have paper and would like some, so what we're trying to do is this wall over here, we're trying to gather your thoughts on what's working, what changes should be considered, and any other comments. And then when we get to the discussion period, we're going to be starting with some questions. The staff has a couple for you, and then we're going to be starting with some of those. And today's meeting is not like a formal public hearing, like you're not going to line up on a mic, we're going to have a conversation. So anything you want to make sure we talk about, if you can get it on there. There are several people with pens and paper here. If you would like some, let me know, and I'll bring it, or you guys share. And after the introduction, we'll gather up whatever comments you've got and start getting them up there. So with that.
So we're really lucky to have Lisa Hanson, our Deputy Director, here for at least a little bit till she gets pulled away. So I just want to introduce her and let her say a few words.
Thank you. Well, thank you all for coming to attend this meeting and visit with us about the Hemp program and trying to identify the things that we can do to make it better, that are within the current scope of the law that we have, and I think continue the conversation about the longer term vision for what hemp can look like in Oregon. Needless to say, I will be the first to admit that this last year has been a challenge. And I'm sure you all will nod with me and say, oh my gosh, yes it has. It's been as much of a challenge for us. Our system, we've had to learn a lot because we clearly didn't have the expertise in hemp specifically. I think we learned that a 3-year license probably isn't the best fit for what you all are doing. And there are just a lot of changes going on. And unfortunately, state regulatory system and the laws that we work in are not always very nimble. Actually, never very nimble. And so it's made it a real challenge as we've learned, and you all have brought new things to us and new ideas about how you want to use this commodity that we weren't all expecting, straight up. I mean, we weren't expecting all the ideas that came forth as all of you came forward with it. So, you know, we continue to look at this as an opportunity and want to work with you to help you all be successful and do what we can within the parameters we have in the law right now. For a lot of change, that'll take a change in the legislature. And, you know, those discussions, I think, are ongoing with many of your groups and the advocates that you have out there trying to figure out the best path forward. And so we're here to try and do what we can to help. But you may be disappointed sometimes because we don't always take positions in the legislative system. We're there as an agency to provide as much background as we can, but we don't necessarily advocate or oppose new initiatives that are coming forward. So just because we're quiet about something doesn't mean we're opposing, just so you know. And I think as we move forward over the next year, implementation and into the future, having open conversations with us about what you're thinking, what you want to do, sooner rather than later, is always helpful for us, so that we can think about it and prepare for it. Because like I said, we're not always very nimble. I mean, we do what we can, but it's a challenge, you know, when we don't know what's coming at us, and we have a lot to learn here in relationship to the cannabis industry as a whole. So with that, I'll stop and I'll let you guys, if you have any questions for me directly about the department's philosophy or anything else, I'm happy to take those. I think Director Kova said it best at a meeting a month and a half ago or so with the cannabis industry is welcome to the family. We're happy to have you and look forward to the opportunities to work with you, and be as patient as you can because we're not always going to get it right. It's not because we're not trying, but we don't always get it right the first time, and we'll just keep trying. So with that, I'll stop. Anything else, Lynn? Okay.
All right. So just to build on what Lisa said, I think this meeting, what we really wanted to do was bring together everyone before we sat down and started to update the rules. We know we needed to do that with the 2015 legislation that passed, that made a few small changes into the statute, mostly biggest being the 3-year license to a 1-year license. So we're going through and we're going to update the rules. I think that last time, as Lisa said, we learned a lot this season. I continue to learn every time I speak to each of you about the different types of practices or production that you are interested in doing. So really the intent of this meeting is to hear as much as we can from you. We're not here to tell you what to do or what we think you need to do. We really want to hear from you. And then what I hope that we can do from this, and we've asked Jean to help us facilitate so that we can kind of take all that information, put it together, and then decide, you know, this part goes to rulemaking, and we'll then consider that in our Rules Advisory Committee of, can we fit it into the rule? Can it work? And then there's another bucket of, these are things that the industry wants to do, but are not currently allowed under the current statute that relates to industrial hemp, and we'll pass that information along to people that are interested in the legislative representatives. So that's kind of the intent of the meeting. I think, like Lisa said, we learned a lot, and so we're going to give you a little bit, Randy's going to go through kind of 3 things. One, the changes we know that we need from the new legislation, Senate Bill 881, which becomes effective January 1. What we learned from further clarifications of the statute that we got as we were going through the program this year. And then third, other things that we learned from the current licensees and going through the program that were in our rule that didn't work. Namely, like when we wrote our first rule, we didn't have any idea that people would want to do multiple harvests a year. I think now we know that. So that's an example of things that we want to kind of gather all that information so that we don't write a rule without knowing, or that doesn't work if you're having 3 crops or 3 harvests of an industrial crop. Does that make sense? All right, any questions from anyone? Yes.
Is this for people who are already growing and already have licenses?
Nope, we want to hear from everyone. If you're interested in having a license, I think we want to hear what you want to do so that, and whether you feel that the rules now would work with what you want to do or what you need to see. So that if you wanted to be a licensee, you could be successful and operate under that license.
Are licenses available?
Licenses, so we'll have to redo the rules, and once we finish that process, we're looking for early next year. So we're hoping that we will have them available before you would start growing early winter.
Thank you.
Hey, you guys, you have to be careful. Fire department will be upset if you block those people in the back end, so you need to. We have a lot of space over here. You're welcome to come over. We're pretty informal today, so don't worry about it. You can walk in front.
It's okay, we know you.
Will there be license limits?
I'm sorry?
Will there be limits on the license issued?
In terms of...
Volume, how many permits?
No, there's no current limits in the statute on volume.
And how would we find out when the licensing opens up?
So we'll publish that on our website, as well as we'll send out to the listserv that we have, that we published this meeting on. That's kind of our best way. We have about 450 email addresses on that listserv. So we'll publish it on our website, we'll send it out to the listserv, and we'll probably do a news release as well when we reopen.
Okay, and is there a way we can get on your list?
So on our website, there's a link to it, and you just go on, put your email address in, and then we can send it to that.
And the website is just, what's the website?
Oregon.gov/ODA. We have it at the end of the presentation, and then you'll see industrial hemp under hot topics.
And probably some of this is going to be covered in the presentation, and it sounds like licensing is one of the issues we want to have up there that we come to first. There's a lot of questions on that. So let's make sure we do that. And we'll have an opportunity for more clarifying questions here soon. But can we pause? So a lot of folks came in after we started. What we're trying to do is use this wall over here to get an idea of the issues you want to have discussed today. So, anybody have issues they've written down, we can take from you, and we'll take your pen and pass it to somebody else. Oh, it's back there. Okay. Any other issues? If you have blank paper, pass it to other folks that this gentleman wants some. And you guys are working on, you've got, those are blanks. Anybody want some paper to comment? Would you like comment paper? There we go. And if you need pens, let us know. And this is it. Come on, you guys. Okay. All right. Here, let me give you those. Anybody want more paper? We've got lots of paper. We like getting the comments. We grab this. Anybody need paper? Yes?
Make a comment.
There you go. So what we're trying to do is get comments up here that folks want to have discussed. So, yes. Good. There we go. She's got a chunk. I'm going to give this gentleman right here a chunk. So in the meeting, if anybody wants some, grab some. So what Lindsay just covered, I was asking her beforehand, because it's always helpful for a group to understand what's going to happen with what you say today and with the discussion from today. So we're going to talk. The staff is here listening to that. I understand there were some legislators also invited, but I know some folks from OLCC are here. So staff is listening, going to be recording all of that. You're going to be taking what's applicable into the Rules Advisory Committee. And as Lindsay said, funneling things that they can't address to the legislature. Then before anything is finalized, there will be public testimony before it's adopted. And the director is the one that's responsible ultimately for taking action on it. So this is the beginning of a process, right, Randy? So this is you're right at the beginning of it. And hopefully the experience over the last year will help sort of salt the discussion on what needs to be covered. So facilitation, just you guys, it's everything you need to know. You learned in kindergarten, be nice, be respectful, let others speak once before you speak twice. And I'll be helping to remind you of that as we go forward. And please turn your cell phones on to silent right now if you haven't already. So, yes.
Thank you.
It's really embarrassing when it's mine that goes off. I did get mine off. So with that, Randy's going to do this presentation, then we're going to start the discussion. And as I mentioned, we'll have an opportunity for clarifying questions. So if there's something he said you didn't understand, we'll start with that. And you guys know the difference between a clarifying question and one that needs discussion, right? So it's just, what did he say that you didn't understand? And then there are a couple questions from the staff that are specific to the things that they have to address, and then we're going to start pulling things off of that and then cover what's next. So it's pretty straightforward. And with that, Randy.
All right,
you're
thank you,
on.
Jane. All right, we talked about experiences from last year. I've got several degrees from the School of Hard Knocks, and so let's hope that we can use, my experience, and we can just make this work. So as you can see, welcome. And this is a gathering. I want to call this a gathering because this is a gathering. This is information mostly from you, us. We're not up here trying to preach or say anything. We want to hear from you. So with that said, here we go. Next slide. Oh, let's go on. Okay, so this is the change. This is the good stuff. A couple of good things happened. So we can use it. The seat now. You like that?
Yes,
Thank
absolutely.
you. So that I thought, I wanted to keep this for the end, but then we thought, well, let's start out with happy things. And here's the other happy thing that we have, from a 3-year to a 1-year term for licenses and permits. And that's good. This darn thing, it keeps wanting me to tell me I've read the security thing, and I've done it like 10 times. So
clarifying question.
yes.
So it's no longer a license, it's now a permit?
There's licenses and permits. A license is for growing industrial hemp for fiber per se, and you would need a license and a permit to grow for seed production to sell to other folks to produce seed.
Growing and handling industrial hemp is licensed. Agricultural hemp seed production, so that you can sell the seed, is a permitted in addition.
Okay, so the Department of Justice went over,
Clarifying, would that also include seed for food or just seed for replanting?
Just for, as agricultural hemp seed for replanting.
for replanting.
And only if you're selling it to someone else. Remember, in the law, it allows you to save your seed. If you're a licensed grower, you can save your seed and use it for yourself. But if you want to sell it to other licensed growers, you would need an agricultural hemp seed production permit.
So you guys, I know there are going to be a lot of questions. I want to make sure Randy can get through this. You can push back on me, but can we try, let's see if we can hold the clarifying questions and come back so Randy can get through it and then start.
There's only 12 slides on this, and so it should be fairly short. And we can go back to a slide if we want to. Okay, so the Oregon Department of Justice studied the law, went over and gave their opinion, and these next few slides are from that. So they have determined that it's got to be grown outside, not in greenhouses, and in the ground, direct seeded as a field crop. No, yeah.
Go ahead and come on over.
Right.
There's room
No
over here.
starts, transplants, tissues
Can
from
I
seed. Yes.
address something that's not trying to slow us down, but the idea that some people come in might hear that this is how it's going to be and how the feeling that we're here to try to discuss what we can change for the better. It's kind of like how you're reading it is that this is set in stone.
Okay, well, no, that's not. Okay, so I was going to clarify this. Okay, when
I'm
I
just
get
trying to
done
make sure
with-
people aren't
with this
confused.
portion. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I will clarify.
Okay.
And so,
So this is the way it is right now.
right, this is the
And
way.
we're working from this. What we're here to talk about today is what needs to be changed. Okay?
What possibly needs to be changed if you would like. So when I get done with this set, I was going to explain
Okay,
what's
okay.
going on. So, but thank you for bringing that up. I appreciate it.
There's a seat over here, sir.
So this might be some, so this is the way it is right now. The separate license, as you can see, for a non-contiguous field. And we've looked up the definition, and it's not touching, and we can go into that a little bit later. So we're going to have a short session, a special session this year down at the State House, the big house down there. And we're going to go over some of the changes and some of the things going on. So that's going to change. Now, we're going to have more rules committee meetings after that. And if there's other changes of the statute that you folks want to change, then that can still be done at any time. This is still a republic and we can still do all that. It's a free and open society, so that can all be changed. But right now, the way the statute is written, that's what the Department of Justice has determined the way it is. So, and this is, I kind of skipped one, but we're going to change the definition of field just from Webster's third. Courtney, you know what I'm talking, the Webster's third, the official dictionary of the court, right? So we're going with that definition. And it also a change to 2.5 acres available for land cultivation. And it did say, let me get my glasses out here, at least to be cultivated. So that's a significant change in the fact that the 2.5 acres has to be available. You can grow a plant in there or 1 million, right? Whatever you got. And before, the intent was a crop. So that's a significant change. So the 2.5 acres, so remove, and so reporting requirements for variety, this is going away. Variety, don't report. If you want to, I suppose we could work something out, but I don't think we want to do that. Total number of lots, that's going to go away. Varietal records, I don't think everybody had variety records, did they? You don't have to answer that. Yeah.
We kept our data.
Right, but I don't think everybody did. So that's just an opinion on my part. So we're going to change the 2-pound sample size. And I know there's a couple of folks in this audience, that darn thing, and I've accepted that every time. I accept it, and then I do this, and it just works like, so change from a 2-pound sample size to taking a representative sample.
Reprehensible?
Not a reprehensible one. Not a reprehensible.
What did I do? Oh, yeah.
Reprehensible, yeah.
You like that automatic spell?
Hey, when I was down at certain people's places, was it?
It was reprehensible.
Okay. And the spell check changed that on me, so anyway, sorry about that. Maybe that was a Freudian slip. Remove sampling by variety. Now, is this something, what do you think?
What do you mean by that?
Sampling by variety.
We'll come back. Let's.
Okay, well,
yeah, let's
go ahead,
capture that
Seth,
one.
if it's quick.
I was just going to say, if we're going to establish that particular varieties have the acceptable THC range, it's pretty important to be able to maintain
Okay, we'll come back to
varieties.
this. Okay, so there's going to be more discussion on that. Okay, that was it. See, it went quick. And so here is, and I apologize, I didn't get the website. The website is very easy to find. Just put in Oregon Department of Agriculture in a Google search, what have you, for industrial hemp, it'll bring you right to it. Trust me, it'll take you right there. It was easier than typing it out, because I can't spell, obviously. So I think, unless we need to go back to a slide. Yes?
Just a clarifying question, on the total of 2.5 acres, I mean, is that the total that we can have, or can we have 2,000 acres?
You can have, that's a minimum of 2.5 acres. If you've got 2,000 acres, that's great.
Okay.
And it's contiguous, so, and we'll get into a little bit more of that.
What about poly greenhouses? Are they considered
Open.
So when my poly greenhouse is open and I just shade, I put poly on it in late fall so it doesn't get wet, is that okay?
You talking just a cover?
A cover with 6-foot sides, open that.
I,
Airflow. You don't really want to.
yeah,
Okay, let's put that down, one down as a question.
let's put that down. That's something we
That might
can
be
discuss.
pushing you there, JC. You might not.
I don't have a
push
good
you
answer
up,
for that
but-
right at the moment. I'm going to shut this down. Does anybody else want to go back and look at the
Well, before
slide?
you shut it down, so clarifying questions. Any other clarifying questions?
The clarifying question on definition of field, in, I think in the rules and regs, it just says no intervening fences or roads, but then in your rules, then you included crops. Is there a reason why intervening, you had no intervening crops? Because there is a difference between the
A field and a...
between the definitions in the legislation and in your rules.
So crop was defined in the legislation, but not field. We defined field in our administrative rule. And the reason we wrote no intervening crops is that for other agricultural programs where we sample or deal with field identification for any type of purpose, if there's an intervening crop, we consider it two separate fields because you have different, identifiably different crops, and so it's not a contiguous area or one necessarily crop of industrial hemp if you have grass seed in the middle or corn or something. So that's why we did it in our administrative rules, just based on how we do things in other agricultural commodities. I think that the clarification that we got in terms of how the statute defined crop as any industrial hemp crop of a single variety under a single license. I'm kind of paraphrasing and I should never do that, but we may have more flexibility other than the contiguous part is the important part because that's in statute. And
Okay.
Courtney's probably pulling up the statute.
Any other clarifying questions? And then we'll start diving into some of the meat of this. Okay. So Lindsay has a couple of questions. As Lindsay mentioned in the opening, that they are really directed to make some change. There are some rule changes they know they have to make. And so we have a couple of questions we're going to start with. And why don't we put this one up just so the folks over there can see and leave this one down. Do you want to shut it down? You guys, do you think you're going to need to come back to this for any reason? No? Okay, let's just go ahead and put them up. And then we can open the room up a little bit. And the blue will soothe us and then it will go away.
No.
Um,
Get my clothes in.
Yeah.
It should,
No, we don't want that.
yeah, it should just go. There it goes, it's off.
Is it going off?
Yeah. Well,
And that,
was-
oh,
I see. Go ahead.
my acrobatic.
Good job. So Lindsay, your first
Yeah,
question.
so I had basically 3 questions that we're still kind of grappling with and want to hear from you guys. And mostly I kind of put these down because I've talked to a lot of you guys, and I think we've talked through a lot of things, and these are some that I want to hear from you on what you'd like to do. And the first one, Seth, for your comment is sampling by variety. So we had that in our rules this time. And I think that as people are doing research, it's something that you guys may want to do, but the thing to consider is if we do sampling by variety, then that means each variety, you need to consider whether you want your whole crop to be considered in the crop-wide average or whether you want to sample each one. This year, because of the 2-pound sample size, which was a little large, there was times where people had varieties that didn't have enough plant matter to get 2 pounds out of without us destroying the crop. And so we looked at it as a crop-wide average. For us, what we put in the rule, we have to do, right? And so if you want sampling by variety, then that's going to cost you $350 for each variety, and we'll have to do it at the correct time. So that's just something to think about, and I wanted to bring it up as a discussion because I think that that point probably is something that we can consider.
So,
Lindsay, maybe to clarify, I mean, I think part of it is when we think about the program, we're
and those
thinking
of you
about
who
it.
came in late, Lisa's the deputy director.
Yeah. Thinking about it, is it a production program or is it a research program? Because we, at ODA, we're about the production side of it. Research really is OSU. So when Lindsay asks you this question, I mean, think about it in terms of the production setting and what you all need from that.
I think that in the whole industrial side of being an industrial program and having us have to sign that we abide by knowing it's not federally approved and all this thing, and then in this whole research angle that other states are using to import seeds, they're actually getting federal approval and not saying that it's not federally approved, but they're working with the federal government to import seeds on research, but they're still selling it as research and marketing sales. So they're able to sell it still. And for us to do research as a small farmer that wants to test a couple varieties and consider that research, even if it's not scientifically backed by the federal government saying, okay, you're doing it, we got an MOU, we know for sure you're doing it the way we think the research should be done to be okayed by us. I think that you were saying OSU was going to help if we wanted research, but I've heard recently they want to help with research, but they don't want us farmers to get any seeds if they got a permit potentially. They would just do it and maybe work with our data, but not really helping us get the seeds. So I feel like with the farm that we did, we were all about research. And we're still researching to see how it rests in the field because a lot of it's still sitting out there ready to get harvested, and it's working good to break down that lignin and get the fiber ready to spin into material. And so we're going to continue to research until it gets done. And I don't think that anybody that eventually wants to do big agricultural might not want that. They might just want to grow for their family and not be a big production farm. They might just produce for what they can do on their family. And I feel like for us to define that it has to be industrial with seeds in the ground drilling is limiting to people that might only have an acre farm, but they want to grow a half acre of hemp for food. And if people just want to get a registry, if we can get to that point, hopefully, where they can register just to plant in their kitchen. If they just want some sprouts and grow a whole bunch and and do it legally so they get the seeds right way, I think there needs to be more lighthearted approach to see how can this work for everyone, not just production farmers that want to come and commercialize the industry and make it something that they have a structure in place to make sure they can make return. Because some people just want to do it for fun, not to have a return to even make it worthwhile.
Amateur.
Absolutely. I second that.
Amateur grower.
I'm going to start the Oregon Hemp Cooperative with Eric. And we're gonna change the world growing hemp. So Eric, Burl Holden, and everybody here, we should grow hemp and get together, buy the processing equipment, bring it to Silverton, Oregon, and process hemp for everyone.
Okay.
I have a comment on the current issue, what we're talking about.
Okay,
right here,
good.
right now.
Thank you. I want to make, in terms of the issue that Lindsay asked about, which was sampling of different varieties.
That's what I want to comment.
That's why I was trying to research, because the research on varieties that we have, and he's commenting about getting our stuff certified eventually, and for us to actually have a seed that's certifiable so that someone that has a seller license could sell to another person legally, we have to eventually figure out how to get certifiable seed. So he's commenting that if we can actually, through maybe a research approach, have a genetic test say that this variety is for sure under 0.3, so if we were to sell it on the market,
I see. Okay.
we're trying to figure a way to do
I'm
that.
coming to you, honestly. So I want to make sure we finish each comment. So I was unclear on how this applied to
Yeah.
sampling. So go ahead.
The bottom line is we have to be able to take separate samples, because if we get hot seed in one particular area, we can't, I mean, we're gonna be doing production, just like she stated, we've already had that meeting. We're going for big production, like it or not, in Oregon. The small guy's not gonna be left out, it's gonna be for everybody, okay? So if we go big production, guess what? Yeah, we have to be able to sample these separate areas, because if we get some hot seed, we don't wanna lose our crop. So it just makes sense. So the 350 is a drop in the bucket, okay, for what we're dealing with.
Okay. So yes, sample separate areas.
Correct.
Okay, sir.
So on the testing, with the new rules for lab certification that's going on through OLCC, why wouldn't we be able to also utilize those same lab services rather than having to go through the ODA as it currently is? So if we need separate field samplings or be able to sample throughout the year, we have a pathway for testing without the burden of that expense, and be able to do it on our need basis rather than just a straight rule basis.
So you're distinguishing between what needs to be done from a regulatory perspective versus your own, the own use of your...
Both, actually, because, when we're required to notify within 21 days of planting. ODA comes out and they do 2 tests, one after you notify them at least 14 days before harvest. So we have to wait for them to come, do their sample, whereas, if we were able to call a local certified lab at a much lower cost to come in and do that, we should be able to utilize.
As long as you guys approve that they are qualified to do it the way you want.
Because there'll be state certified labs, so why not take advantage of, local businesses, and shorter time frame. And so when Jerry mentioned, you're able to take care of things if you do have.
If you're a farmer and you're working with Mother Nature, 14 days won't work.
Okay.
They brought up good issues. In the committee, we had some conversations about this. If there were a more reasonable way for us to do the testing, I think that would be a good way for us to go about it. It would bring the cost down, but if I'm not mistaken, we had to include that testing cost in the curve of how many people we were going to have as licenses and the overall cost of the program, or is that separate?
The testing costs are separate.
Okay.
Yeah. Those
So
go
that
through the
350, I
lab.
know that there's a lot more reasonable, testing out there. I know that.
And that's something we can discuss
Yeah.
in terms of how the department, we would need to consider the ability to take the lab and also the custody of the sample. But that's something we will hear your comments and consider.
Sir.
It's my understanding that the legislature has decided that it's valid to produce CBD for as an industrial hemp product. If this is so, why are we using a THC standard at all to characterize industrial hemp? And what are you testing for and why?
So just to clarify, the legislature...
He was right. It's one plant.
You're right.
Go ahead.
So industrial hemp in statute is defined as cannabis sativa plant that's 0.3% THC or lower.
That has nothing to do with industrial hemp.
Well, that's how our law defined it, and so that's what we have to regulate.
But that has nothing to do with it.
So this could be an issue that we set aside and
For
forward to
statute.
the legislature. Because, again, we've got two things, the
Thank
things
you.
these guys can deal with and the things we're gonna have to send to the legislature. So, remember this piece. So,
Back to the research and on doing testing on, if you guys are going to allow now to have like a 2.5 acre farm where if they want one plant on it, they
I'm
can.
gonna ask you to hold, because there are other people who've had their hands up
Well, this
that
is
haven't
pertaining
had.
to what you're saying. I'll do it real quick. It's just the fact that you can
Okay,
have
but you-
testing on one plant, and if a farmer has another farm over here that's 2.5 acres and they have another variety, you're still going to have 2 tests done potentially. So it doesn't matter necessarily if we can get around the cheaper testing then to have our varieties done differently. If we're going to be able to have one plant here, one plant there, if someone's willing to pay it, I think that should be an option for us to define our varieties, if that could help us get eventually certified seed to people that know that these varieties are for sure been tested and can hopefully get certified eventually.
Okay, so one thing, I know you guys, I know some of you have been really, really deeply invested in this personally. I'm not talking about money, but that too. And you have a lot of information, but there are a lot of people that want to talk. So remember, let other people talk before you come back and do a second one. So, sir.
I just wanted to really quickly clarify, it's not just the pieces that are up on that board. There's another top piece, and it's the federal government with the federal farm bill, and that's part of the reason with the THC requirement. And it also deals with the research versus production. We're not a production system. We can't be. It's research only. We're producing under a research program. And it's a really important point to keep in mind as we go forward with our own internal rules in the state.
I don't
Okay.
agree with that.
Well, it doesn't matter. That's what the federal law says.
Is that-
So let's.
I don't agree with that.
Hey, you guys. So,
It's on
Lindsay,
ODA's comment
Randy,
on that.
Talking to federal.
the comment is that this is a research program. So under the federal allowance for this, it's research. Is that right? But under the
They're not
state-
allowing it.
Yeah, so we're here to talk about our state statute. That's all that ODA has authority and that we've been asked to regulate. So the federal farm bill doesn't necessarily relate to, and the provision in 7606 doesn't necessarily relate to. Our statute was written as a commercial. There's no distinction between research and commercial. They didn't make a distinction when they wrote it. So it's just the state program that we're talking about in terms of rules here.
So
That's
commercial,
what
you
we have the
mean full
ability to
production?
change.
Commercial, you mean full production, right?
Meaning that it is legal in this
Okay.
state under a license to grow or handle industrial hemp. That's what the law was written. That's what the law did.
So you guys, I want to see where everybody is on the question that Lindsay posed, which was about sampling multiple varieties. So pose the question one more time.
So the question is, when we do the regulatory sampling, do we want a provision in the rule to allow different varieties to be segregated and sampled differently?
Yes.
And if
Yes,
so, then that means that they would have to be if we put it in the rule.
Why can't they
Okay,
have
so
a
you
choice?
guys, what, nope,
Can it be
I
a
just want to
choice?
see where we are.
I thought you wanted
Yes
feedback.
or no? We've been talking about it, so I just want to see where we are. So yes
Yeah.
or no?
On the
Can
question,
it be an
Well,
option?
just, yeah, I can't, you're right. I can't see thumbs and palms at the same time. So
Why does it
just
have to be
yes.
all or nothing? Can it be an
I
option?
just want to see where it is. We're going to talk about it more. We're going to talk about it more. So yes, you want multiple sampling of the different varieties.
Can
So
we have
it's-
an option?
and no, you don't, or you've got concerns before you could want to see that. So there weren't. It was a little less than half that said yes, but
Could
hardly
you have an
anybody
option,
that said
Lindsay,
no.
like to say that you would want to have your whole field, this is only one crop, or say, hey, I have 2 crops in this field, can you do 2 in this one field? Have that be an option.
We can look at that and whether that's an option. I think the question now is, do we want to consider different options for different varieties in rule, not what you guys can do on your own farm and your own research and your own testing.
So the rule means this is the way it has to be. So you will have to have multiple tests.
But you can have it, it have to be an option, it could be, like, you have to tell us one way or the other, but it's an option, could be a choice.
So we
Your
will
own
take that
personal
comment.
choice or the state's choice?
Well, then they could say that if you want to have your whole field tested, you have the option to tell us if it's 1, or if it's 2, you have to tell us, I mean, it's an option to tell us that. I mean, either way, you don't have to give them an option, but they can tell you either way.
Okay.
I mean, if you have one seed variety.
I'm going to let her talk and then, yes.
think that when you're talking about an agricultural crop, that if someone wants to designate the variety and have the variety segregated, that should be up to the farmer. If you want your varieties tested separately, you can do that, because if you want certified seed, you will need to do that. But if that's not what you're doing, if you're growing it just for industrial purposes and you don't care about that variety, you just need to test the variety.
You don't want to be required to.
You don't want to be required to do it.
So it
If you
should
want
be
to do
something
it-
that they can choose to do on their own,
Correct.
not regulated as a requirement.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I
If you
think at
report
this
your
juncture,
variety-
I'm seeing a lot of heads nod. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
It should be allowed, but not required.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. All right, Lindsay, there you go. Okay, so the next question.
So then the answer is a no.
Mr., did you have, Jerry, did you have something else to say?
Basically, I mean, just, we have to have that option at least, because a lot of people just have, if they're growing one variety, that's not really a concern. But if you are doing, which we're not, you know, everybody's doing R&D whether they like it or not. And so if you're growing more than one strain, obviously, you want to be able to protect those strains in case one comes back hot, so we have to have at least the option.
I think one thing you guys have talked about is this idea of having local labs that are state certified so that you can have that resource to do that, right?
Correct.
Okay. So Lindsay, what's your next question? And I'm going to move us on, you guys, just because I want to make sure we cover some different issues.
I have a question about the labs.
Okay, let's put that one on here. Okay, we'll come back and...
Okay.
Multiple harvests. So this was one I brought up in the introduction. I've heard from some people that there's interest in harvesting more like a hay crop where they would have potentially 3 harvests or more, or doing some overwintering, cover cropping, other things. When we wrote the original rule, we treated industrial hemp from what we knew as an annual crop. But I wanted to have some discussion about whether people are still thinking of doing that and how you would want the rules to reflect that in terms of reporting and applying change of location, harvest, that kind of thing.
It's an annual license, so it should be able to be planted throughout that 12-month period.
Yeah.
And especially in the research part, in the first year, you know, a lot of people planted at different intervals to see when was the best time to plant, to based on when was the best time to harvest. And so it would be, you know, really beneficial to take full advantage of the year. In that year, the permit, you know, period shouldn't revert back to January if you get a permit in June. It should be, if you get a permit in June, you can go all the way until the following June.
Yeah.
Rather than based on a January 1st number.
Right,
On the,
right. Yeah.
So the idea being it's an annual permit, but Lindsay, was the question really because if you have multiple harvests, you'll need to do multiple tests?
We will need to do multiple tests, and we also I want to hear from the group in terms of reporting. So right now, you report when you plant, you report 14 days before harvest, you report when you receive. You know, does that work for multiple harvests? And then also, like Cliff said, if you're planting in 3-week intervals, when we sample, we have to sample it at a certain time to get the appropriate THC level of the plant, which is closer to harvest. So that also can cost more money because we may have to sample 3 times at your 3-week intervals, depending on how that shakes out. So
That's
I
okay.
wanted to have that discussion. Because if we sample your one that you planted last, it probably isn't as mature, and so our THC test isn't going to be as accurate as it would be for your latest plant, or first planted plant.
So thoughts on that? And Jerry, I think I'd seen your hand up
Yeah.
first.
I know what, I mean, basically, if we're running a 90-day cycle or a 106-day cycle, we can, depending on our latitude, longitude, we can get 2 crops in.
Depending on the strain of the seed,
Right,
too.
right. So, referencing that, yeah, we need at least to be able to do a dual cycle. So what Cliff said, an annual is good with the ability to be able to do several crops. Now, we're going to have to absorb those costs.
Yeah, is that $1,500 every time you're saving?
So because it's not a 3-year license anymore, we'll redo the fee since it's only a 1-year license. So it won't be $1,500, I don't think, but we haven't done that full analysis. We don't have a proposed fee right now.
If the testing is only for THC and it's legal, then why are you still testing for THC? I mean, no one's going to grow a variety of hemp that has a high enough THC.
It's to get it on the market
If they
for
do,
food.
it doesn't even
It's
matter.
only
So
for
what?
food
Yeah,
on
and
the
if they
market.
do, who cares? But who cares?
It's a Schedule 1 drug
Okay,
still.
so,
That's why.
Because, I
Let's
mean, but
come
it's
back, you
hemp,
guys.
it's not
It has to
marijuana.
be, it's under a
It
different
has to be
regulatory
0.3% THC or less, or it is not industrial hemp. It is marijuana.
at
Right.
that point.
And certain varieties at certain latitudes and longitudes and certain production practices will come back over that limit. And then it is no longer industrial hemp.
And then it would fall under the recreational marijuana program instead. But if Jesse is here and could speak to that.
It is
But
all
we won't call on him and make him do that
There
right
is no
now.
other
Go ahead.
kind.
So because the purpose of the testing is for THC levels in it, why do we have the one in the beginning? Why can't we get rid of that and that expense and just have the one at the end, which is really the most important thing?
Yeah, so to be clear, we did one at the beginning this year because we were learning and the department took that expense on ourselves. So that won't be going.
How do you?
That's why we did an early one this year.
No
You
bill.
guys didn't pay for it. It's only that one.
Who covers the bill?
official sample
Who covers the bill like that? Is there any grants or subsidies that can help cover the expense of the license if there was and have to be a license? Because I feel like there's got to be a little bit of slush fund to pay for these little $500 fees. You can write off a little bit. Oh, that one we'll take that. How can we
I'm
eventually
going to
make it?
spank you pretty
Well,
soon.
in the day school, they put them in time.
Well, I'm also wondering how we can do a research
You've got to let
program.
other people talk. Don't just jump in. It's not fair to the other folks.
Yeah, I
We're going
think
to
if
send
we
you
all
back
have
to
someone if we
kindergarten.
have someone to share, it's good. I'm not
No,
trying
it's
to interrupt.
good, but just give other people a chance. That's all I'm saying.
Well, you're not even giving me a chance, so why don't you give me a chance?
Well,
I have one
you've
good thing I want to
had
say.
more than other folks.
How
So-
are we
Greg, be quiet.
Okay, come on.
How are we going to help each other?
Eric, exactly. I will come back to you, but you got to let, there's a
I'll
gentleman
grant-
back here who hasn't had a chance to
He
speak.
tapped on the word grant. I'm in the solar business. I'm here to help these guys go green from the ground up. And there are USDA grants available for agricultural growers through the REAP program that you guys administer, and also your Energy Trust Fund for Oregon. When these guys are licensed, and I'm calling on these gentlemen and ladies, can I submit an application to harvest that grant cash capital to help them put in their solar energy projects and go off-grid and or wherever they are remotely? And if you're going to segregate, which I'm hearing these 2.5 acres or the crops themselves, wouldn't that cause a problem in administering the way the grant is for other agricultural growers in the system today?
So, are you talking about indoor?
No,
When you're
I'm-
talking about solar?
Yeah, I'm talking about
No, you guys
like
say-
pumping and
okay, I just wanted to
irrigation
make sure.
systems. These guys have lots of irrigation
Okay.
costs. And so that would help them qualify for installation of VFDs, lighting systems, all types of energy efficiency programs that fall under the USDA and even the Oregon Department of Agriculture.
We
So
have a lot of information online, and I've looked up a lot. So to start looking at that, let's talk about growing hemp here.
Okay,
I'm sorry,
so,
but we got to move this along.
yeah, so the question was about the multiple harvests. So that's what we're focused on. Lindsay, do you have the information you need on that?
Yes, I think so.
Okay, you had one more question.
Yes. No, I'm trying to remember. Oh, okay. So I just wanted to talk through a little bit in terms of, so as we transition from a 3-year to a 1-year, handlers, if we have just a handling license, we talked about, if you get your license in June, then it goes to the next June, because it's a 1-year, not necessarily an annual, right? So thinking through the semantics and the details of, when you have to get your license. So if you were to be a handler, you may not need to get your license before somebody plants, because you're just handling. But, how do we work that into the rule that you can apply for a license and make sure that people apply for a license and are licensed before they start doing the work, right? Before you build the facility or gather product or get seed for that matter. Is there something, a provision in the rules that would help you all with that? Or a flexibility that we can provide? Or do you not think that it's an issue?
So articulate just fundamentally the question again.
I think the question is in terms of different timing of licensing and how do we account for the rule for, we're going to send out kind of an administrative nightmare if everyone's license comes
At the same time. Okay, Lisa,
Let me see if I
thank
can help
you.
a little bit.
Sorry.
So this is going to be a government answer. I'm just going to lay it out for you that way from the beginning. In our agency for licenses, typically they're either on a calendar year basis, so January to January, or on a fiscal year basis, which would be July 1 to June 30. Because, and we don't prorate them, you come in one way or the other. It really is a management nightmare when you talk about a larger program.
There's only 100 or less people going to farm. It's not
Sir?
that hard.
Hey,
I'll work
honey.
for you.
You gotta wait. Let her finish.
Defeatism is not what I'm into. I'm into let's be optimistic here. Come on. It's
There are
not
a lot
that
of
hard.
people-
I've heard this complaint from hearing it from your side on
You
Lindsay's
guys,
telling
do
you
you
what-
want to hear him right now?
No. Guys,
Thank
Lindsay
you.
told
Listen.
Lindsay said this, that what you were saying, and it's not that big of a complication like you make it sound like fear-mongering, that it's a big issue. It's not a big issue.
Chill.
Yeah. I don't know why you make it across like it's such a scary thing
You
to work
heard the
through.
audience. They want to hear her. Please let her finish.
It's not a big deal, guys.
So with a few growers, you're right, it's not a
not
big
gonna be
deal.
that hard.
As the program grows though, it becomes a bigger deal. And so thinking about it, how you want this program to grow into the future and what the right
To grow?
license period to grow. I mean,
How about the right to grow? We just want to grow it, no regulation. How's that?
Yeah.
Then that's
Okay.
a legislative
So you
question.
guys,
That's
we
a
have
legislative
legislation
issue.
we have to move
outside of
forward.
what we
Okay,
have.
we'll be moving forward. Thank you.
Not gonna happen all
Can I understand what you define as fiscal again?
So it's July 1 to June 30 is a fiscal year. That's our
That's your
Fiscal
So
year.
in other words, if we have a corporation or a company, and our fiscal year is different, you're not
No.
acknowledged.
Yeah,
So we know we're-
most of the local and state government in Oregon is
Okay.
on July 1 to June 30.
Yeah, although in the department, we do have some licenses that are, start January 1 and end December 30. So there are two licensing periods that we typically have for our programs. And again, I'm talking typically have for our programs and trying to bring you all in like the other 250 crops, that we work with traditionally. And so thinking about that, how does that work?
So
For
is
you
it
and the
either,
agency.
so Lisa, are we asking an either or? Do you want it on calendar or fiscal year, or are you saying, is there another option they can consider?
I think ideally it falls into one or the other
Okay.
to keep it simple.
Okay, so you guys, does one of those make more sense than the other?
Can I ask a clarifying question first?
Yeah.
Do you have registration systems set up as opposed to licensing systems for other crops?
So, I've got to think for a
Bees,
second.
honeybees. Honeybees are registration, and they're May.
And but it is you have a specific time where they have to register?
Yeah, it's May.
Okay,
Yeah.
thanks.
But I think that's the only place that it's a registration system. Everything else is really a license for some action.
Thank you.
And I think also
Or
another
function.
thing from program administration standpoint, one of the nice things about having the license terms be the same and why we do it is also because then when it all comes up for renewal, we can send out a reminder and make sure that everyone renews their license. Because remember, if your industrial hemp license expires and you don't renew it, then and you're holding some crop, then you're illegally holding the
If we're
crop.
doing it, we're
because
smart
you're
enough to do it. I
licensed,
think we're
right?
smart here.
So
Working with our Rules Advisory Committee, it was felt that a calendar year worked better for production. I mean, it's agriculture. You're going to plant in the spring, you're going to harvest in the fall.
But not with hemp, 'cause you can do all
and
year round.
Your dead time is late fall through early spring. that's the reason that we selected the.
And I'm not trying to be obscene here, but someone needs to
You
stand
know,
up for this.
they-
And
you
I'm
guys-
standing up right now because I'm not trying to be mean, but I'm just standing up on our behalf because they're standing up on their standing that's easier for them. And I'm saying, hey guys, it shouldn't be that hard for us all to have it our way if they're asking us for our opinion. I'm trying to voice the opinion of all of us. Hopefully they can.
No,
You're not.
If
You're
you have a register
not.
when you start, if in the middle of the year you come to Oregon, you want to start farming hemp, and you have only a year from January, then you're out 6 months. It just should be able to be a year from when you
At some point, you're
start.
going to have to understand, the rest of the group doesn't want you to keep interrupting.
I'm just saying, I'm not interrupting. No one was talking. I just said what I
People can't
said.
talk over you.
Someone can say.
People can't talk over
So
you.
the question they have posed to you, and
People
Eric,
can't
that
talk.
is exactly what they've asked, is they want to know what will work for you guys. So is calendar year work better? I'm seeing some heads nod. Yes?
Yes.
Calendar because you work
what we're
with
looking for.
Okay.
Does not
So
work for me
that's-
at all.
March to November.
March to November, which basically,
Good.
so
You're not a
basically
farmer,
in
I got the
that,
farmer talking there.
yeah, no, I hear you.
Well,
I
if we
come
get a
from
license for a full year, I just want to use the whole year. I mean, that's all.
So, okay, so I think we're.
I just think it's
we're
rude
hearing
to
that,
turn down
calendar
people that
year
come
is the
in.
one that seems to be. Okay, so I'm
It should be a
gonna,
year from when you get your license.
Eric,
It should be a year from when you get licensed, nothing.
you're gonna get a lot more respect if you can.
I feel like it's rude to throw my opinion out.
Nobody's throwing anybody's annual license. That would be it.
That's what
It's
medical
Courtney,
marijuana
right?
people get.
Can we listen to Courtney? Go ahead, say it again.
For the majority of the farmers, correct me if I'm wrong, it'd be ideal for all of you if you had your license and you had it 1 year from the date of the license that it's issued to you. So you had a true year for your license. Not based on the calendar year, not based on a fiscal year,
Yes.
but based on your actual license date.
So when
Hallelujah.
so if you apply in March, you have it till the next March.
Yes.
If you apply
Full 12
in,
months.
if you apply in August, you have it for the August. Is that a viable approach, that you have
That's all I was saying.
different periods for?
It's not what we do traditionally. It's, there are some drawbacks, as Lisa mentioned. And I mentioned, but I think it's something that we can consider.
Thank you.
So we can take that option. People can hear you a lot better if you don't interrupt, though.
I thought I was doing something
So,
nice.
see, she didn't interrupt. We stood and we listened, and then we could hear it.
In
Go
my
ahead.
mind is that there's not a set date. So you're risking missing that date and your license not getting reprocessed if you don't remember or it doesn't get here in time or that kind of thing. Whereas when we have a date that we're doing annually and we know, we wait for them, we're watching for them. But being able to watch for everyone's annual date for us is difficult to do.
I'm going to count out, and I'm going to go with folks that haven't spoken yet. So, sir, you, and then you, sir, and then you, and then you. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and there was one other hand up. Okay, go ahead, sir.
So if I hear the argument correctly, I think that this whole argument is just about the first year license, because once you're in the system, once you're in the cycle, then if I buy a license in March and it ends in December 31st, I'm now in the cycle from January to December. So it's only the first year licensees that are going to have this issue. So the state should be able to prorate that license if that's really the issue. If I come in July, I know I only have 6 months left on this particular license. I shouldn't have to pay the whole fee. I should
There you
pay
go.
a prorated fee.
Okay.
We do that in other industries. It's
Okay.
in the government does.
In crops, it might be different. Go ahead, sir.
I had a question. You were saying there's like 250 different agricultural products. How many agricultural individuals are there? 5,000, 10,000?
Oh.
So let's say 5,000. So following the pretense of Eric here, that would be 5,000 different renewal times throughout the year. Does that make sense?
It's a system. It works. There's a lot of systems that are complicated.
Eric,
How does the
hang
internet
on.
work?
You made your
You're
point, Eric.
interrupting me, sir.
Sir.
You asked a question. I
Eric.
I
responded.
wasn't asking you.
Well, you pointed me out, and you're trying to attack me.
Okay.
Why are you attacking me, man?
Honey.
Why are you saying words like that, man? I'm
You're
a nice
so
person.
annoying. No,
Well,
you're
I'll
not.
sit somewhere
If
else.
you were a nice person, you would be quiet.
I'll walk away from it.
Everybody wants you to be quiet,
You
but
just
you.
sweared at me saying for me to shut
I
the F
swore.
up, dude.
You never heard that
I'll walk
word
away
before.
because you guys are
I'm sorry, buddy.
intimidating me, and I'm a nice guy.
Goodbye.
And I'll I'll walk over here.
Eric,
I'm not going
I am
away.
sure
I'll
you
walk
are
over here.
a nice guy,
Yes,
but you
he's-
are not being
You're not
nice
a nice
right
guy.
now by
You're not a
interrupting.
nice
I'm not
guy.
interrupting.
Go ahead,
I'm talking
sir.
when
I
you
just
guys
have the
are talking.
question
There's
that,
no-
does that, under
Oh
the
my
pretense that
gosh.
whatever system, does that mean that it's full open enrollment? There's not a particular cutoff date for
Is there a
applying-
cutoff date
for applying for a license first year, or is it open enrollment then? Okay.
And is there a limit on how many?
We had
I think
said-
that was
I
another
think we
question.
had said earlier there wasn't.
That
Yeah.
are issued? No, there's no.
For the grower. Okay, yeah, so going to the board now on licenses, one was availability of licenses, so it's open enrollment and there's no limit.
Can I tack the second part onto that real quick?
Yeah.
The second part, so if this is just for cultivation, what about a processing? Is that permitted? Is that licensed? Is that?
Processing requires a license.
Okay.
You need to receive it from a licensed grower and you have to be licensed.
So that gets worked out by personally networking with growers to process for them? Okay.
A grower can process their own under a grower processor license, but if you're just processing, you need to be licensed.
Separate license.
If you're a grower and you're doing both, then you can do both under one license. If you're just a processor, then you need a license.
So does that come from ODA, or does that get issued, like the grower has one and can then gift it?
No, it's non-transferable, it's a personal
Okay.
Okay, and then we had 4, and now I've got 5, 6, 7. So go ahead. Oh, I didn't see you, I'm sorry.
This gentleman just said in regards to prorating the license, that if someone, I don't know why anyone would apply towards the end of the year anyway, but for production, if they get the license for part of the year, you just prorate, give it, and then they're just right in the cycle. I agree with what he said, that way you have everybody on the same cycle and you can send out the reminders.
I think that's nice.
Email works really well, can get a hold of a lot of people, so we'll start using emails, we can network with each other.
I'm going to add you on.
That's fine.
You're 8, except I have 2 5s. I discovered, I'm sorry.
I just had a clarifying question. Is the thing about that particular thing, while we're on the topic, it's really short, but I can wait too, because I've got
Okay,
notes.
thank you, because,
Okay.
thank you, I appreciate it. Okay, so we had 4, and then, who did I say was 5?
Him.
I said you, but I forgot that I had given him 5 earlier. Go ahead.
Okay, so I want to go back to talking about the science here. And I think it's very peculiar what you choose as something that you've been doing out of tradition and something not. I have been doing research on cannabis for close to 50 years. I was privileged to actually know Mr. Richard Evans Schultes, who not only wrote the handbook on psychedelic plants, but was the founder of the Harvard Botanical Museum. I also directly have met in my travels Sergei Grigara from the Vavilov Institute, which is the foremost commercial industrial hemp institute in the world. Both of them are very clear. There is only one species, Cannabis sativa. All the rest of them are just cultivars. In fact, Mr. Schultes, when I asked him specifically about industrial hemp, said he thought he had heard of it, but he didn't know of it. And since he was the foremost expert of the 20th century, that ought to tell you something. So which traditions are you going to follow?
Yeah,
I think that's a question that we pass to the legislature, so we
Well,
will take that. That's a question for them to consider, because that's defined in law.
Thank you.
Right here, Representative.
And in the consultation.
So there's one variety, many cultivars.
And let me, I just have to say something. Remember earlier I said this is still Republican? These are your laws. So they're your laws. The governor to be. And get a hold of your legislators. And if you want things changed, that's how you do it. Emails, letters, phone calls.
Okay, 5, other 5. Was that you or you?
My husband said I was 8.
Oh, okay.
That was very nice of him.
Talk about lack of support.
You can go ahead. I will defer to you and then I'll. Mine was more of a clarification when you were talking about a grower can, under the same license, grow and process for herself. But if you're going to process only for others, you also need your license. Now, if you're a grower who grows and processes, can you process for others as well under that same license, or do you need a second license?
Yes, you can process for others under that grower processor license.
Okay.
So if it's a grower processor
Industrial hemp
license, you can process others as well as your own.
Oh, then that's your fee, right?
Okay, so,
Right, so
yes,
I
ma'am.
have
No extra
a
license.
comment
so
and
yeah.
then a question.
Okay,
The question is, how much is the license going to cost? Do we know that yet? We don't, okay. And we don't know when we'll know, or?
We'll know before early part of next year.
So the people
Yeah.
that got a license starting August 25th of this year, what was their cost?
$1,500 per license.
Okay. Do you think it's gonna be-
And $1,500 for a permit. Now remember, that's a 3-year license,
Okay.
and they will continue to hold that license for 3 years.
Okay.
That's a grower processor license.
That's either a grower processor license or an industrial hemp seed production permit. We got
So-
some of those as well.
But that's for 3 years.
That's for 3 years. Now
So
it'll
when
be
you,
1 year.
when you redo it, it's going to be just 1 year.
Yes.
So the question on the licensing for the 1 year, I'm a real estate agent in Oregon, and so we have to apply for a license every 2 years. And it's predicated on when our birthday is versus when we got our license and then our birthday, which of course you wouldn't want to do. But what I guess my point is that they're able to email us and let us know, geez, you know, it's time for you to renew your license. Here's the website, you can pay online, you can send a check or whatever. But it's obviously, real estate agency is governed by the state of Oregon, and they're able to do that. So I would think that would be something that
there could
the
be some
Department
other
of
way.
Agriculture could go to some place like the real estate agency. How do you set that up?
Okay.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Okay, I think you were next.
Yeah, so my question was, maybe I'm just confused, but the way I interpreted what you said or what I read was that if you grow in a year, you cannot hold your seed, you know, beyond that license period. So not like wheat where you can grow it until the market improves if you want. So you're saying that's not allowed?
No, sorry, what I meant was if you let your license expire, then you can't be holding that seed, because in industrial hemp, you have to be licensed to handle it, hold it, grow it.
Then the follow-on question was, and I think I saw in one of the slides, was you could only hold or sell seed for planting. So I can't sell my seed to Bob's Red Mill for food?
You can. Oh, I think what Randy was trying to convey, that with Senate Bill 881 that passed this year, you can now sell your seed for food. That was an error in the original law that was fixed this session for that very purpose. So now you can sell industrial hemp seed that's not capable of germination, what we would call not agricultural hemp seed, but just hemp seed for food products.
Just a real quick, it might be helpful to distinguish between grain and seed. Seed is considered sort of foundation, specific cultivars. Grain is used for these different products. Just be easy to
Yeah,
use both.
we use agricultural hemp seed because that means that it would be used for an agricultural planting, and that's why our permit's called.
Have we entertained organic yet on our hemp seed? Certified organic?
So I can answer that right now. In the United States, organic is a term that's regulated by the federal government under USDA AMS. And so right now, no cannabis products can carry certified organic because it is still illegally federal. They will not allow it to be certified.
In that turn, you're making a corporation such as I lose 20% of our income because it's not organic. Because when you're growing it for food, people want to have that organic attached to it. And if you can't say that, I'm losing money through our corporations, and I'm here to make money for our corporation, not lose money. So
That's something that you would want to write your federal legislators about?
So, and I got that up here. So I'm going to count off here. You, sir, Cliff, Eric, Claire, who?
Checkered shirt.
Oh, yeah, you were next. So you're next, and then and then we'll start numbers over again. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, go ahead, sir.
So I've sat in on quite a few of these hearings, and I've been on the Rules Advisory Committee. There's a lot of confusion between people between what these people can solve and what you need to go talk to your legislator about. And if you go and talk to your legislator about the same issue over and over and over, without having a solid foundation for the solution, they're not going to listen to you. So you gotta, it's their process. You may be able, like Randy said, to be part of that process, but remember, you're one of 330 million people in America in the process too. And everybody in this room's got some really good ideas. I've taken a lot of notes. I'm just to try to talk, if I get back on the Rules Advisory Committee, to talk to people about how to solve some of these. Some of these aren't solvable in here. I've been on other Rules Advisory Committees. I've been around agriculture for 25 years, participated in them. And you cannot get frustrated by that, but think about whether you have a solution for it, because a lot of the questions I hear in here are things that, there's pieces of them that are really good, like we're talking about a licensing. Well, why can't we just prorate it and pay it on the last 10 days of the year? Well, what if you're going to become a handler for the last 10 days of the year and you're going to try to work the system to avoid part of that fee? What about getting licenses every day that, that we could just start every day into the process and renew them whenever we want? You know what? That'll work. Like it does in real estate, except it may cost you $10,000 for that license because they're going to have to add a lot of manpower. Now, on the original Rules Advisory Committee, there was a lot of pushback about, why do I have to pay for a license to manage this program? Well, there's another 3 million people in Oregon that might say, why do I have to pay for a license for you to have a program? So it's not, you got to participate in it, but you got to be realistic about it. And if you have those kinds of issues coming up, you can get what you want, but you better be ready to pay for it. And that's the thing. Take that point home. That you need to be ready to pay for what you want out of the licensing program. And two, you're not going to get everything you want out of it. So you got to adapt. And that's part of agriculture, is adapting to what you can and can't do. And I guess my third point is, they can't solve every problem you have. So get together, talk about it as a group, but know the difference between what they're trying to do, which is take legislation, which obviously, as you've seen through the iterations of this, isn't always perfect, and take those ideas back to your favorite legislator and talk to them about how do we change the rules to add this, and then they will let you know if all the people at the state capitol agree with that change or not. And they may not. You may have to be very convincing, and even the most convincing person won't get them to change the rules to everything you want.
Okay, thank you. And then we have 1, 2, 3, 4. Go ahead.
I just wanted to add to what Edgar said. The USDA is certifying organic hemp seed and hemp oil out of Canada right now. So they are doing that.
All the more reason to stay compliant with the federal rules.
Have different federal laws again.
So once it becomes an agricultural hemp, or not an agricultural hemp seed, a sterilized hemp seed, it is no longer marijuana. That's why it can come in from Canada. So it could be certified there, but under the U.S. system, you have to have we're an organic certifier. So to certify a handler or a processor who's selling organic hemp seed, we have to see an organic certificate from the actual planting part, from the crop, which we don't have the ability to do right now in the U.S.
Okay. So we're working our way up, you guys. Yes, go ahead.
This goes back to the slide, Randy, because there's 2 licenses right now. There's a grower's license and there's a seed handler's license. And I think
there's an agricultural hemp seed production permit.
What about, is there a seed handler's license?
You mean under our seed laws?
Under the hemp program.
Handling hemp in general.
You guys have a marketing plan to get all this to the masses so we can tell everybody how to grow hemp?
Outside the scope of this meeting today, we're talking about the rules today.
Okay. All right. Did you get a question?
Yeah, and just
Okay.
clarify, so there is no seed certification program currently. You guys have abandoned.
We don't do seed certification anyway. OSU is is the state seed certification agency.
Okay.
But you're right, but there was in the rules, they were talking about seed certification, so that's why.
There was not in the rules anything related to the seed certification.
Certified seed.
If you're going to sell
Or
agricultural
certified.
hemp seed, it has to be certified under state law to be able to sell it. And so we have to have OSU be able to certify the seed.
Which is why
That's
it's
not
not in the
not
rules.
true.
That's not true.
That's not true.
Sal, you know better. You know better.
It's not
okay.
true?
No, it's not.
You don't have to have it certified by OSU to sell it?
There's no seed certification available for industrial.
Can I?
Okay, it's Eric, you guys, it's Eric's turn.
Okay, I'm not trying to take the mic from here, but I have a suggestion because the research that we can do, that I was trying to suggest, if we can come up with a possibility, because someone asked about the honeybees being registered, there might be money. I'm not saying we should do this. I'm just finding out if you guys think that you know of any idea that we could pull in some money from the state to subsidize something that's been prohibited for 78 years, 80 years. It could help a lot of people. There should be some funding available to help us waive our licenses if they want a license. Or what we're trying to fight at the legislature level already, we've got a bill in place to fight for registry instead of licenses, which would be interesting and be great. But the one thing I'm trying to suggest is potentially us have another thing, like Colorado might have had some success with having a research license. Potentially, if we want to do importing of seeds and have these certified varieties, we might want to consider having a research license that we can say that our seeds are doing it for research and we get the DA import under the guise that those aren't going into the commercial system, that's separate. Those are people that have that license to do research. And then those seeds could still go into the system under the sales and marketing, like the federal government's allowing in Kentucky. So if everyone here wants to farm hemp and is worried about where they're getting the seed, I think that should be the top of our priority list, is how do we get a research system set up like Colorado might have had, or something where they're now working with the ag department to get seed. And there's a company that actually got organics, or a one cert certification working with the ag department, and the ag department could do a research through a pilot program, having the federal government approve that we're doing it not for commercial, separate for these researchers, and get imported seed this year if we have that set up. And if it could be something that could be changed to the rules and added without legislative approval, that would be great.
So Eric, it would take a legislative change to have a research
And are you guys
license.
open for a research license? Do you see a way for that to work? For us to be able to get...
Legislative, it has to be a legislative change. If the
The
law
ag
changes and we will, no, the
I'm
legislature.
saying would the ag department be able to handle that kind of difference in
If the legislature changes it, is what
We
you're
will
saying.
implement it.
So it's
Yeah.
Because Colorado did have a research license that could have been one of the...
And they probably got it legislatively, and then the department had to implement. So we get the law, we will find a way to implement it, because
Yeah, we want to look at what they're doing in other states and maybe ask you guys what you think would work for you to help it make it easier. So,
Okay, go ahead, sir.
if there's any.
I'm done fine. And first off, from watching what's happening in Oregon and watching what's happening in other states, I want to start off with thanks to these folks who are all getting to know and are trying to really hard to implement the program that works for farmers. So thank you for that. I just want to point out that I do think, I'm saying this first as an observer for a long time, and then this year now as a hemp farmer in Oregon, that we do well to watch what other states are doing that are having success on a lot of levels. Legislative changes aside, I just want to show everybody this USDA organic hemp certificate that is being issued. It's a federal USDA, and I'll show you guys later and forward to you. It's for hemp, and it is being issued in Colorado with, it's a federal issuance, but it's through cooperation with the Colorado Agriculture Department. So it is possible and doable, and that's just one point. It's important to our group. Organic is very important, but bigger picture for all of the farmers that we want to see succeed, that we pay attention to what's going on in other states, and we don't really have to reinvent the wheel. There are simple, keep it simple solutions that can work. Acknowledging that legislative changes are not a matter of blinking and it happens, but it's not complicated.
Okay, thank you. And then, yes.
So,
Did I get that right? Yes. Okay.
I brought a present for everybody here. I brought a poster over here. It's called 21st Century Industrial Hemp, Energy and Composite Concepts. I invite you all to take one. It's how do you grow it, and what do you grow it for, and how do you do it? It is the roadmap that nobody else has been thinking about, that was created in 2008. I gladly invite everybody to take one of those. Now, I'm seriously thinking of having a session at Jerry's next event that's going to be closed, where I will give an explanation of what this roadmap is for all real farmers and processors. So if it sets you right, come to the thing and you'll know what you should be doing. And while it's wonderful that 2,000 or so acres was grown here in the United States, I haven't heard one person tell me they knew what they grew it for or how to harvest it or anything else. So there's the roadmap. Please help yourself. My gift to Oregon. Okay?
Thank you.
Secondly, I have been involved in the organic seed business since the early 80s. In fact, I'm a founding member of the Organic Seed Alliance, and I'm a founding member of Oregon Tilt. Our problem with the organic situation is much more local than the federal government. This has to do with Tilt and the Organic Seed Alliance. I've accused these people openly of acting like ostriches, in that they will not acknowledge the part that cannabis has played. There would be no organic movement, there would be no organic gardening without cannabis. So that's where the problem is. We need pressure put on Oregon Tilth and on the Organic Seed Alliance. That's the problem.
And if everybody wants to sign, I have a list after the meeting. Eric and I are going to do the Oregon Hemp Cooperative. Everybody can get involved. We can buy the processing equipment to get it all processed.
Okay. And what's your name?
My name is JC. I run Sugargood Farms in Silverton, Oregon.
Okay, so you guys all see.
Burl Holden here. He's an amazing individual. Holden Wholesale Growers. He's involved with growing hemp. He's been in this valley for over 50 years.
Are you pointing to the man right next to you?
Right here, Burl Holden.
He
President
said
of the
that he doesn't
Nurserymen's
have
Association
any-
of Oregon, 1989.
He told
wants
me
to grow
before
hemp.
the meeting that he didn't have any role here today except for turning the lights on.
His role is JC,
I'm-
Sugargood Farms, and here we go.
I'm kidding.
Eric Hempseed, we're on.
Very nice gentleman.
Excuse me.
Go ahead.
I want to comment on what they said, and it is really important because Colorado has already, they produced organic crops through the Colorado Department of Agriculture, and we know the people that have done that. And we know who they are, and we talk to them on a regular basis. So there's no reason why we can't use that as a model in Oregon to try to achieve our goals.
We're talking about organic.
That'd be our research.
So this is outside, I think it's something that is voluntary. In every other crop, organic is, that we have conventional and we have organic. In terms of the rule, we don't regulate whether something's organic or conventional.
Right.
So I
I'm
think
just
it's
saying-
a
I'm saying
separate
with
issue.
the Colorado Ag Department and then you, maybe we can have some type of line.
You guys, we're going to run through, we're good on time. We're going to run through some of the other issues that have been coming up here. This one, I think we've heard, no testing requirements for established varieties. So the suggestion is if it's an established variety and you know the variety, then you shouldn't have to test it.
That's not, we didn't discuss that, it's a little different.
Yeah, well, somebody had raised it, sorry.
Oh, okay.
But do you want to address it?
Sure,
Okay,
yeah.
Go ahead.
Is that what?
Yeah, go for
Okay, sorry. So this is something that Canada does. So we've talked about this where this is kind of back to the certified seed question where they've determined at their latitude with a long-standing industrial hemp program that there are certain varieties that are certified varieties that they know will not go over 0.3% THC. This is something we talked about a lot in the RAC for those of you that were on that committee. And something that I think we would be happy to work towards. But right now, given the variability with our latitude and where we are, and we don't know how varieties are going to respond in Oregon, that's not something that we can do now.
So the comment is to consider this. We'll put this in for the future. Another one was to create a traceable way to transfer high CBD hemp to the MMJ. Is that that's the medical marijuana program, or a larger pharma.
They don't want us to now.
So there's that one. So then the issue of seed supply, availability, and sales. I know we've touched on that. Is that something, did whoever put that one on, have you heard enough?
I know one thing for the seed supply. Oregon State finally got the permit. They've gotten, Larry Curtis called me directly. We talked about it a week ago. He says they moved forward with the permit. They've already had the DEA come out and have a compliance of the farm. They'll be grown between Albany and Corvallis, 15 cultivars this next year if they get the funding. They're saying they need $250,000 to grow it. I don't need any money to grow it. I just need the seed and the available for the license. And we will grow it, no charge.
Okay.
That's what I'd like for everybody, is to get the seed to be able to grow it. Oregon State's begging for the money.
Is Katie? I was Lisa, sorry. Is there a way for us, is it possible for you guys to make that change to a registry without us having to legislatively get that approved if you guys do it with the honeybees, and there could be some kind of funding coming from another angle? Because I think that there has to be a push to help us farmers just for our image. Because if we're actually trying to charge someone for something that really doesn't need to be charged, if there's ways to fund it otherwise, it looked good for our, I mean, in Kentucky, they have Kentucky Proud, it's their brand. It's like,
So
we can
Eric,
have
you
more.
would take that, this law is specific to this crop and how it's handled. You would take a change in the law to have a registration process.
And is that
So
going to
things
fund you guys
that-
somehow? You guys still have money to still process things?
You all pay for this program. It's completely other funded, paid for by the fees to grow it
But if it's
and
registry,
process
then
it.
how would you guys, how would you guys, is that going to get?
That would be, you know what, Eric, I'm gonna have you hold that one, just because it's not something they can address. We've got it, it needs to go to the legislature.
Well, that's what I'm
So-
asking, is they going to come back later with them saying that, oh, we'll have to pay for it somehow? So I'm trying to address that now.
That should be, like, take that, that's
If we
not
have
something
any
that's...
ideas now for how to fund it is all
I
I'm
know, but
wondering.
Eric, I've got other people with
If
their
anyone
hands up
has-
that haven't talked yet, so let's get to that. We've got the issue down. Yes, Sam?
I just wanted to clarify, I'm Gabrielle Sarah, and I do federal government affairs for Oregon State University, so I just wanted to follow up on the gentleman in the corner's comment that we are moving ahead. We're actively working with DEA to be formally registered to handle hemp. We are working to identify seed to import from Canada, but this is all a very heavily regulated process. We are not officially registered yet with DEA. That's a process that's in motion. We are looking and having those conversations with seed importers in Canada, but we can't actually officially begin that process to request permission to import seed until we're officially registered. That being said, we're actively invested in that program, and we intend to procure about 8 to 11 different varieties of hemp, and hopefully we'll have it legally procured and stored in time to grow for the 2016 growing season. That being said, for us to actually conduct agronomic research trials, it is a little different because we want to have a very systematic process to provide information back to you all. And it costs money to have the security protocols and the individuals to actually conduct the research. So we won't be able to get that seed in the ground to move forward until we've identified funding to move that process forward. So we certainly look forward to working actively with all of you and our state partners and the legislature to make that possible.
How are we going to get
Okay,
seed?
so the next one is this gentleman back over
So,
here.
Lindsay,
Yes.
so right now, the process of getting seed in the state of Oregon, is it a kind of wink wink and they bring it in from Canada or Colorado and they grow it, and then it's, by God, this comes out less than 0.3 THC, so it's a legal seed, but it's mysterious how it got here in the first place? Windblown.
Yeah.
Windblown.
The statute doesn't cover how the seed gets here. That's
There you
and
go.
from the very beginning. What do you do?
Thank God.
All it says is you can grow it in Oregon.
Okay.
And if you do grow it in seed.
And I do recognize a number of you from the recreational marijuana meetings that were held about a year ago, and there was that same issue of it's going to be illegal in July, but there's no legal way to buy it, so it's getting here somewhere. So Cliff, Eric had his hand up. Anybody else? Oh, wait, we were going through these.
Can I jump on third?
Okay, you did have your hand up earlier. I'm sorry.
That's fine.
You, then Cliff, then Eric. And I'm sorry for the choose.
It's Ben Cassidy.
Okay.
I just, in response to the question that was just asked, at what point will the transition be made to where the seed will then have to be sourced from a known location? Is that what we're
Right now, there's nothing in statute that requires that, so
Is it?
there's no known date when that would be.
It's estimated though that that's the next step in the process, or
I have not heard anything
Okay.
to that effect.
Okay. So Cliff.
One of the concerns this year that came out was an agricultural issue always, it's cross-pollination, in this case between the two cannabis varieties, one's above 0.3, one's below 0.3. Has the department talked about that, or is that something Oregon State is maybe going to work on pollination travel, things like that, or
So what are the issues about how to segregate the recreational and medical from the industrial hemp that is
Yeah, I know
below?
the big push is to put the marijuana indoors and the hemp outdoors, but, there should be a way to coexist together, I'm sure, and is the department looking at that at all?
I'm going to let Lisa answer the question. Coexistence is our favorite word here.
Lindsay's right, coexistence is our favorite word. So within the cannabis world, it's not the only place in agriculture that we have issues of coexistence and cross-pollination.
GMO.
And it has been the point of a lot of conversation over the last several years, whether it be growing canola in the Willamette Valley with the specialty seed industry and others, organic versus conventional, in places making sure that there's no cross-contamination. There continues to be those discussions from a department perspective, and we're asking this question of grower groups and leadership as well. We've really felt like the best place for those coexistence issues to be dealt with is grower to grower. Work with your neighbor and make it work. There have been coexistence issues in agriculture and all kinds of other crops other than the real high-profile ones that we've seen over the last couple of years. But that's a conversation that's ongoing, and we're saying, so is that right? Is that the right way to handle this? I mean, should we continue saying, growers, you need to go work it out and talk about planting times and distances to prevent the cross-pollination, to work with your neighbor? But that's generally been a lot of the conversations going on.
Friendly farming.
So it's a corollary question to her response, if I could ask it.
If you guys are okay with that, him going ahead. Yes, okay.
That was back to the definition of field and having intervening crops. So part of this cross-contamination is if you're an industrial hemp grower and you're growing on one part of your property for seed production and stock production, and on the other part of your property for CBD production, you would want an intervening crop so you don't start to get cross-contamination from the male plants where you're growing seed. But the way you currently define field or crop, that's not allowed under a single license. Is that something you're open to consider to changing?
My understanding from the Department of Justice is that would need to be a change in the statute, specifically in the definition of crop, because it specifically talks about contiguous fields, and that would not be contiguous.
In the law. So it's not just
so that would be a legislative
interpretation. It's in the current law. So the law could be changed using the legislative process, if that's something you all thought to be important.
A seed crop and an oil crop are still two different crops.
But yet you said that it's now 2.5 acres, so you could have one plant in there. So if you had, say, 40 acres, and you had a field over here, you had some inner fields there, but along the side you had one or two plants leading to another field, then you would have that.
It's always, if I have a centimeter or here, and so that would be considered on a case-by-case basis. We know we have contiguous, we have a definition in the law.
Right.
We'll work with you to determine whether you're.
Like if you had a greenhouse and on the field, like if you had like just going back to what they just said, if you had a greenhouse operation that was only lights, no outdoor except for when the sun was there, but during winter you used for farming indoor, then and you had your outdoor, and then at some point you had outdoor and indoor, that wouldn't be contiguous, but that should be allowed. If you have 2.5 acres, you could have one crop in one part of your farm, one in the other. I don't see why, as long as it just wherever that one crop is, it's in a group of that crop, right? I mean,
So again, crop is defined as contiguous crop under a single license.
But one plant would be a crop then at that point. Contiguous one plant.
Sure, but then would you want to have a separate license for each plant?
Well, if we can get that changed, that is if we want to get the registration, hopefully, but if not, we would like to address that we wouldn't hopefully have to, because the DOG came back with that interpretation. I know you guys originally had thought that it was okay to have a couple, because a farmer might own 2 pieces of land and not want to have to get a different license for his other farm he has. So is there a way that you guys can fix that?
That's a legislative
Okay.
fix, and we do have it on our comments.
And that wasn't even my question. The question
Oh,
I had
okay,
was
well,
about
go to your
the research,
question.
because I'm just concerned for people on getting seed, and I hear them wanting to raise $250,000 for research, and they can get a DA permit, but for us to be able to get seed, and it doesn't sound like they're trying to even supply seeds to farmers, even if they're doing it through us, as research for us to be the farmers who conduct research. But I know they have the protocol to get funding, they have to have it systematic so you get the data. But what I think is that's one approach, but Kentucky's doing it in a way where they didn't need all this funding money, and they have the people getting the data for them, and it's all new, so the data is not going to be certain the way. I mean, people got their seed late in Kentucky, but they still have some data. It's not the accurate data potentially, because if they would have planted earlier, they could have different data. So my whole thing is, if we have a research thing that's something that you guys said could be possible, we need to know how to fight it in the legislature to work with you guys, hopefully, because the other approach I thought would be to have a pilot program through the ag department saying that we have a license and our research is doing separate from commercial that you can get a license for. So for DA permits we got through the ag department potentially, showing that those seeds that we're importing aren't going into the commercial system, if that's even possible. We want to know how you guys suggest for us to word our what we would tell them that we want, so that if we are working with you guys on how a pilot program could be set up, because with the federal farm bill, you just have to be working with the agriculture or a higher Institute of Higher. So if we work with you guys on a pilot program, that would be federally approved to import seed, and you guys could actually get a DA import license, probably better that way if there's a research angle to it.
And Lisa's ready to answer your question.
So again, if in new legislation, it was passed that we had a pilot program was to be established within the Department of Agriculture for grower research to issue grower research licenses,
Okay.
then we implement what we're given in statute.
Would you guys be open to get DEA import license on those? Because I know Ron was trying to think about doing it, but
Eric,
they came
I
back to
can't
That's not their
answer
position to answer.
questions like that when I don't have the authority to do
No,
it.
at that point, if we got to the point where we had approval,
hypothetical,
and the legislature,
She
So
can't answer
Eric,
the
you've
question
asked a
until it
number
gets
of
to
the
that point.
questions and said, if we got it, would you? And every time she says, I can't answer it. So
I'm
I
not saying that
think
she has to give us an answer, but is there something that there's hope for
she
the
has
farmers?
said,
She can't even give you an inkling.
They will,
She doesn't have that
they will
authority.
implement it if the legislature passes it.
So we have to tell you guys that you guys have to do a pilot program? Is that
You have
the
to tell
only
the
way?
legislature and ask them if they will tell them to do it.
They're not authorized to do it right now.
But-
Eric, we're gonna go to some other
But would
ones.
we have to ask for them to get a DA report in that?
You have to go to the legislature, we've got it.
To ask
So I'm
you guys
gonna
to-
go, because we've got a lot of other comments up there. Here, you wanna go, okay, so I'll read this off and Lindsay, you tell me whether, okay, so growing hemp approved, then rescinded. Why is that likely to happen? Oh, why is that, or is that not likely to happen again?
So I think this is probably a question about last year when we stopped issuing new licenses at the end of August. The reason we did that was because we had a lot of questions about the current statute. It was at the end of the growing season, so we didn't foresee anyone actually starting to grow after that date, given that there wasn't much more summer left. And
Well, I
we
asked
had-
you. I asked
Okay,
you
Eric.
and we were changing, so we're at the end of the growing season, and we knew that we had this one-year license that had already been passed. So we didn't feel that it was prudent to to continue to issue 3-year licenses. One, also when we knew that some people who applied for a license at that point could potentially be out of compliance as soon as they applied for the license, given the lack of clarity in the statute. So we did that because we didn't feel that it was prudent to continue issuing 3-year licenses.
So the likelihood of it happening again
It is very unlikely.
very unlikely. Okay, so the next question is minimum taxable production threshold. So I think the question is there a threshold, or what is the threshold?
Yeah, so there's no threshold. I can't speak about tax issues because I know nothing about them. And minimum production, so all you have to have is 2.5 acres of cultivatable land. That's in the law, a field of 2.5 acres in size. That's the only minimum. But there's-
Contiguous
Yes,
field.
and planted
Yes.
from seed outdoors.
But there's no requirement in terms of actual production minimums.
So,
Do you have a question regarding that question?
Yeah, I'd like to say that we can think locally here, or we can understand that we're part of the world of what's going on. There's supposed to be a meeting. There is going to be an emergency meeting of the United Nations next year to reopen the narcotics treaty and take out marijuana and maybe all narcotics from it, which has been the sticking point and the foil that the federal government and everyone has used to have these completely ridiculous laws that all these things that we don't like are based on. So the truth of it is, they're holding an emergency meeting because the rest of the world is pissed off at the United States about the drug war. They brought the United States on the carpet last year and said, how can you legalize in Washington and Colorado and you're still burning fields in our countries?
Wait, Dave, I want you to apply it to regulations.
So in 2016, they're going to rewrite, they're going to change the treaty that controls all the laws that you have been implying that you've been in compliance with. So that's going to make all your laws invalid.
Okay. Sir, you had your hand up. And then the gentleman behind you.
I do have one more question, and that is that you have an entire system here that you're talking about growing products, and then you're debating whether they should be registered or licensed at this time or that time, or organic or this. But is there actually a way, a system that you have to provide seeds for all of these people?
That's what I want to help you guys
I
with.
think that was the question of the other, and Nancy, you want to answer that again?
I would just say that at this point, that's not, we don't have a system to provide seed.
Okay, so my
And
question
this has been an issue since the very beginning. I would say that every other state is dealing with the same issue.
Okay, but so the correlation is that you grant me the right to have a car, but you don't grant me the license to drive.
We grant you the license, but you don't give you the car.
Give me a car, but you don't give me the license.
Okay, so we know, you guys, we know this is a problem, so, and we can't solve it right here. Eric, it's not your turn, I said the gentleman behind.
Yes. Right now, with regard to adult use cannabis production, water rights issues are becoming a huge issue. People who are now going to get OLCC licenses are going to have to deal with those water rights issues like they haven't in the past and like regular agriculture has to deal with. We do have a Bureau of Reclamation memo from 2014 where they claim they're going to shut off water to anybody producing cannabis. I guess my thought is, what's the Oregon Department of Agriculture's stance with regard to this? Because obviously, from a definition standpoint, industrial hemp is not marijuana, but is the Oregon Department of Agriculture ready to intervene if the Bureau of Reclamation comes in and shuts off our head gates in the middle of production next season?
Great question.
Can you tell the Bureau of Rec what to do with their water?
No.
There you go.
So, okay,
Well, no,
so, and
I'm going to let Lisa address this because, yeah.
We don't regulate water.
No, I know that. I'm
Yeah.
just wondering if you guys have got any signals from the Bureau of Reclamation that they're going to try to come after the hemp farmers, because they've signaled they're going to come after the cannabis.
I deal with water rights a lot. Most water districts, only a percentage is allocated by the Federal Bureau of Reclamation. That's not true in all districts. Some districts it's entirely from them. Some districts they don't have anything. So that's something you need to look with your local water district about.
No, I know
because
that.
it's like in Southern Oregon.
Memo. I'm just wondering if the Department of Ag.
Let me finish. What I'm saying is you got to talk to your water district and find that out. And they can say they're allocating water that's not from the Bureau of Reclamation to go to you. They will do that, and they can say that, and they do that in Southern Oregon for people that have water rights for medical.
Mixed water, too, water that comes from both Bureau of Reclamation and non-reclamation.
I know, but they can
So-
say where they're getting it from for you, even though it's all in the same system. They
but
can
I
do
guess
that.
the fundamental answer to your question is, no, the state is not involved in that.
Are you aware of it?
We have not heard anything from industrial hemp.
That's
Okay. So I'm going to go back to a few of these right now. So I think we've talked about how can I grow hemp or be allowed to. We've talked about licensing, so I'm going to set that one aside. Coexistence of hemp and marijuana without pollinating
Sinsemilla.
thank you, crops of marijuana. have we talked about that enough to answer this question? In other words, it's coexistence, it sounds like?
We all want coexistence. And, you know, I'm a commercial recreational applicant, and I currently grow medical marijuana, and I'm a board member of Oregon Sun-Grown Growers Guild. And my family grew hemp up until it was made illegal in Southern Oregon. And we did that over in the Tule Lake Basin, and I want to see both of them coexist without issues. See, for me, my issue is not the pollen is going to contaminate my seed crop, because I can get seed crops from other places in the world. I keep seed crops, so that's not the issue. The issue I have is my crop being seeded, rendering it unsellable to my customers.
So, so one of the questions Lisa, or one of the statements Lisa made was that they're looking for input from the growers on this issue, and what you're saying is you would like to see some regulatory intervention on this.
And what we had already in place in Southern Oregon is we had the Southern Oregon Seed Growers Association, SOSCA, and what we do is we have a mapping system, because cannabis isn't the only thing I grow. I grow 2,400 acres of various crops. And what we did with that is we have the mapping system. Hey, I'm growing this kind of beet this year, nobody close to me can grow it, and it's something we all agree on, and that's something that I see that has the application so both industries work together, because it's like Edgar's down there. Edgar wants to grow hemp. I want Edgar to grow hemp. I don't want him to be burdened because I'm growing cannabis, but I think that's, you know, the systems are there, the systems are in place, we just need to utilize them for the coexistence.
Okay, Lisa has a response for you.
If there was no
Okay,
restriction.
wait, Lisa's responding.
I'm just asking this guy.
You're right.
No, but he can't
There's a
hear her.
model in the Willamette Valley through the Willamette Valley Specialty Seed Association. It's an association, private association, that has come together to set up rules around pinning for the crops that are grown here to assure the cross-contamination.
Yeah, we do that with SOSCA. We do the pinning map.
Yeah. And so it's a matter of growers, again, coming together. The department doesn't have a regulatory role in that. We've tried to help start conversations around systems like that, that are private systems, but there's not a regulatory piece. Fair enough?
Yeah.
But there are models, and there are really good resources out there that we can help point you to that work with.
Oh, I know we have all the systems in place already. I'm just saying we want to all work together.
Oh, yeah.
So.
That's a good message for us. Thank you.
And the working together that's happening right now is collaborative and cooperative and non-regulatory. I saw a lot of heads nod in with the question of, do you want regulatory assistance with that? And folks nodded their heads. Is that correct? No. Okay.
We just need a database on ODA's website saying, hey, you're in this region, go to this, and
talk
that's
to
your
these
resources for doing such.
Okay. All right. So this other comment is very
So they
similar,
can't
so I'm
be
going
bound
to,
to-
and it might be, what's your name?
Jared.
Jared. It might, Jared, I don't know, this one maybe yours too, it's Harney County. So in Harney County, you can not grow recreational marijuana. Can counties ban hemp? If not, can we grow sooner than in counties where recreational marijuana growing is legal but conflicts with hemp?
So I don't have a good answer to this question, and it's a really good question. What I've been telling people is you need to talk to your county. And Sunny, I don't know, or Lisa might be able to talk a little bit about, because the hemp legislation and statute doesn't say anything about it, whereas our marijuana statute specifically allowed this ability for counties. And some counties have defined their bans differently in terms of whether it's cannabis or marijuana.
The state definition of cannabis excludes industrial hemp.
Exactly.
And so when you're dealing with your counties, you need to make sure that their local ordinances also have that same exclusion, so you don't get lumped in with the OLCC recreational growers.
Explain that again.
I think it's and I'm not a legal scholar, but my understanding is the Controlled Substances Act in Oregon defines marijuana as not industrial hemp. And So if they use the language marijuana and they're referring to the Controlled Substances Act, then potentially it would be excluded, but we don't know that for sure depending on the language in the county.
So you have to look at the language in each county. Okay. And Lisa, were you going to add on to that?
No, that's, it becomes a local issue.
Okay, so one more comment on that one.
The way that we understand farming practices is that the state has, supervises all agricultural practices, which means if the state says that you can grow it anywhere, basically grow it anywhere. You're going to have to challenge it legally if the counties say that they're going to put a ban on it, but you have very good standards to do that.
Right. I mean, but there are places where it has been challenged to exclude some crops.
Right.
Like in Jackson County, and that's still legally in a place, and so there is not a preemption that says only the state regulation is here, but that is a general standard that growers grow what they grow under the rights farm as long as it's within the law. Fair enough?
We're getting so many side conversations that it's getting difficult to hear, so try and not. Or you can take your conversation outside the room. That's a good solution as well. Go ahead.
Thanks. So this comment is also about coexistence, and there's so much knowledge here on so many levels, so I'm going to restrict my comments just to areas that I feel like maybe I can help with from the perspective of seeing what's going on elsewhere. And bigger picture, what's really happening in the real world, many people have heard about the battery research. It's far beyond that. It's actually really next generation research with hemp. The writing on the wall and the long-term future is that the THC discussions that we're having now, with first of all honoring the fact that people are concerned about their livelihoods. I'm a person who cares about all varieties of all types of the cannabis plant. So I wouldn't be saying that if I didn't. I wouldn't be saying what I'm going to say if I didn't feel that this is to the benefit of all types of the plant. We're going to be in the future not talking about THC levels anymore as a delineation amongst the cannabis plant, because there's going to be a fiber variety that today would be defined as hemp that benefits in strength and softness from a higher THC level, and there's going to be psychoactive cannabis farmers in Jackson County that are going to purposely cultivate low THC as either a medicinal product from a certain type of a cannabinoid entourage, or as a marketing effect of wanting lower impact. So the bottom line is coexistence is not just nice, it's essential to the future, and it's just, as folks have already said, it's about good farming practices and communication. So the one thing I urge people to do is to stay away from the nonsense rhetoric of conflict that was rearing its ugly head, including in the legislature last year. And just to end it up on something spicy, we're talking about next generation applications for hemp. This is also some of the oldest. A friend of mine in Colorado is marketing the Declaration of Independence, printed on U.S. grown hemp paper. So some of the oldest applications, as the original Thomas Jefferson's original draft really was done. I don't know if I mentioned his name, Mars Beagle, Colorado Hemp Company. So old and new, it's about, obviously, but it's about coexistence.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we're going to do 3 more questions off the board real quickly, and then we'll wrap it up. And I know the staff is willing to stick around and continue talking with you if you like. So one question was about access to interstate markets.
So I think, I don't, whoever did this, maybe I'll try and answer what I think you're asking, and if you can clarify, but once the industrial hemp is processed into what's an industrial hemp commodity or product, meaning it's made into fiber or paper or food product, and it's not sterilized seed or the live plant, then it can be moved interstate, because then it's no longer considered marijuana. Does that answer whoever's question this was?
I just found out that the Ag Department in Kentucky just accepted loans from Colorado legally somehow, so there might be some changes with our ability to do that. One question I said.
Okay, let's go through these, Eric. Yeah.
Okay, well, can I get back to your question a sec later? I'll hold my thought.
And we'll stick around later too. So the next one was about alcohol products. Is it possible to infuse alcohol products currently approved by TTB in Colorado, distillery to purchase bulk industrial hemp and the number of those.
Yes, so is it possible to infuse industrial hemp, you mean from a practical standpoint or under the law?
Legal standpoint.
I can't give legal advice, but I would say if it's an industrial hemp product or commodity, that would, then it's an additive and you would have to talk to OLCC and TTB.
And Jesse is right back there. He knows everything there is to know. How's that for a setup?
He's hiding.
Yes. And then currently approved by TTB. Distillery to purchase bulk industrial hemp. So the only thing I would say on that is that distillery would need a license if they're purchasing bulk industrial hemp and processing it.
Is that a permit or a license?
It's a license.
Okay.
Okay, so we answered all your questions?
Right on the nose.
Okay. And then this one, we weren't quite sure what it was. March 2016, what approvals will actually be triggered, state, and fed. Anybody here who did this one? Okay.
You got a freebie.
All right. I think in glancing through it, it looked like we had at least indirectly, if not directly, answered most of the other questions. So Eric and then Cheryl.
I'm not trying to get you guys to directly tell us how to do it, but feeling that you guys do support us, it feels good to know that I'm kind of going about the legislative thing, even though you guys can't give your opinion maybe. It's just guidance on how we're going to do it, because I don't want you guys to tell us you're going to go ahead and get a DA import if we're allowed to do a research, if we add that into our legislative thing we're going for. But do we need to say in there that we want you guys to be mandated to get a DA permit, just so that you guys are helping us as farmers, if you guys are able to, and there's no reason you guys shouldn't be able to. If the federal government will allow you guys to, and you want to help us like you're claiming to, is that something that we have to have the legislator tell you to do
You
in
know
order
what,
for it to
Eric,
be possible?
why don't because I think that this is a deeper conversation.
Well, we just want seed for everyone.
Yeah, I know. Why don't you stick around afterwards and talk to staff? I think that's really, because this conversation, I'm feeling like we can't get deep enough in here.
I was wondering if we were going to be able to get seed for everyone.
But I will tell you.
Let me say it a different way. I'm going to address it a different way. I'll try one more time with you. If we're authorized by the legislature to go do something, and the funding is provided, then we implement those laws.
Like getting a permit, like getting a DA permit.
If we are authorized to go do that and the funding is provided to carry out the function, we carry out those duties that are in the law.
That's all I've got.
So it sounds like it doesn't even have to be mandated. It just has to be authorized and funded.
We can get funding for that.
Okay. So
I just want
Cheryl.
to see that.
Cheryl. And then I think, is Cheryl the last one? And then one more. Cheryl, Courtney, and then we'll do a real quick wrap up.
I think that you've touched on it somewhat, but there's a lot of issues in regards to processing.
You guys, take the conversation outside, okay? It's getting a little too loud.
Not having processing facilities for regardless of what you're producing, whether it's the fiber, the seed, the oils, whatever. But if there are facilities that are processing other products, for example, there are facilities that process the marijuana, could we use those facilities? Is that authorized? Can we do it? Whether it's a CBD, whether it's a seed oil, whatever. Can we do that?
There's nothing that prohibits it as long as they obtain a license to handle industrial hemp. Then they can handle industrial hemp in their facility.
What if they just bought it like the raw commodity it's in the market now?
They have to be.
The raw commodity is still industrial hemp.
I know, but you can
So they have
buy
to have a
raw
license.
fiber from another part of the country still.
Fiber is different than the raw product.
I'm saying raw fiber, raw plant leaf material, or
Okay,
whatever.
plant leaf material is defined. So that's all defined in what's an agricultural, in industrial hemp product. That's in the law.
I just thought you said once it's on the market, then it's out of your control.
Once it's an industrial hemp product, then it can be legally sold.
No one has legally entered the commerce.
It specifically says what part of the plant you can go to the lot and look it up, right?
So Eric, let's take this one aside. I told these other folks they could talk. Courtney was the last one.
I just want to say how wonderful it is to see how many new faces there are out here and all the interest that there is here in Oregon for industrial hemp and how many new farmers are going to be. And as such, a majority of the existing licensees and numerous going to be licensees for the 2016 production season have organized into a group called the Oregon Industrial Hemp Farmers Association. We are lobbying this upcoming short session. We're holding weekly calls so that everyone can stay informed about what's going on with the rulemaking, with the legislative changes. We're also working on organic certification for Oregon. There are actually 3 farms in the U.S. that have been certified organic to date, so we're working to bring that to Oregon. And if you would like to become a member, all you have to do is just show a true interest that you are going to become a licensee during the 2016 production season, or you already have a license. And if you want to become involved with our group and learn more and stay up to date on what's going on with industrial hemp, please come talk to me because we'd love to have you involved with us. Thanks.
Okay, so, Lindsay.
Well,
What's next?
I think we're wrap up next steps. So thank you everyone for your comments. This is very helpful. I think there's a lot of issues that we know are out there. Not all of them are solvable. We'll continue to have the conversation, but I think this was good. We were able to hear from a wider range of people who are interested. I'm still available and I'll continue talking with you all. I think what our next steps are is we're gonna, like I said, take some of the comments and the issues and distill them down and kind of put it, I said 2 buckets at the beginning, but I forgot about the federal bucket. So some of this stuff is gonna be in the federal legislation bucket, some of this stuff is in the state legislative bucket, and some of the stuff is in things that we can change in our rules. And we'll add that to the minutes from this meeting. And get that out to you guys. And then we'll be putting together a rack and updating the rules here in the next couple months. It is our intention to get them done as soon as possible. We think there might be legislation in the short session that could change the statute as it currently is. I guess that's another question for the group. I've heard from many that you would like to get your industrial hemp license as soon as we can get rules updated and get going. But if there are changes, so the thing to remember then, we'll have to do another, we'll have to redo the rules again. And you would have to, that license would still be valid, but you'd have to be willing to accept whatever is in the legislative session comes out of it as the new law, as the new requirements for your license. I'm not very good at saying things.
So I think what Lindsay is trying to say is we can do this as either 1 or 2 rulemakings. We could go ahead and start a rulemaking now and implement what came through the 2015 session 881, which is putting the 1-year license in place, changing the definition so that seed can be used for food. Or we could pause and wait until the end of the short session, which would be early March, to do the rules. But remember, there's a long process and timeline in there potentially, unless we can do them as an emergency. So I'm kind of the mind we may want to do it in a 2-step process, even though it's more commitment and more work by people. But at least we get the annual license in place for you and get the other definitions changed.
I think it has to do, otherwise it's going to drag on and you'll miss another planting.
Okay, that's okay. That's good feedback. So I mean, yeah, no.
If you get registered, then it might be a difficult thing anyway. We have to wait for it. You can't just have a licensing. Doesn't matter.
So that would be something that would change in legislative session, and then we would address it then.
Yeah.
So you guys, you have all been great, and I know this has been tough, and Eric, thank you. You really started working hard to try.
I have one last
play
question.
fair. Well, let me get this out. People will stick around. Jerry has one last thing he wants to say too. So remember, if you are not on the list, go to the ODA's website, and it is
Oregon.gov/ODA. At the bottom under Hot Topics is industrial hemp. That's the easiest way to get there. And then on there it'll say listserv, industrial hemp listserv. You click on it, put your email address in, and you'll be signed up and get any emails that we send to that listserv.
And we did not have a sign-in sheet here today, so we're not automatically adding you. So really want to encourage you to go online and get on if you're not already on there. Staff will stick around and talk for a little while longer. And 5 words, Eric?
Well, I'm just wondering, if we have this handling thing that says you have to weigh out your final product, I still have a whole bunch of hemp and I haven't weighed it all out. I'm just hoping I'm not going to get in trouble that I can't possibly get a weight of the final product. So I didn't address that today, but that's a concern.
Okay, so talk to staff about that one, and Jerry. One final comment,
Thank you all for
Jerry.
coming. We appreciate the input, and it's been very helpful to have a larger group in one place to just get a sense for where people
For
are.
people's information, we're actually, the end of July, or at the end of January, we're having a meeting with the Oregon Farmers Union, and we have 9 of the licensed farmers that are in Oregon that'll be there, and hopefully all of them will go in.
Where's this meeting, Jerry?
This is going to be here in Salem, Oregon.
Okay.
At the library, like the last place we had ours. So if anybody wants to get on to the OHIA's website, look at it, everybody's welcome. We need to continue connecting so we can get it right.